Your bracelet isn't just an accessory, it's a signal. Whether it's made of jade, obsidian, or wood, whether it was a gift or chosen on impulse, what rests on your wrist is already whispering something into your energy field. And in Feng Shui, that whisper is no small thing. It can invite prosperity or quietly drain it. You see, the wrist isn't just flesh and bone, it's one of the body's most powerful energetic gates. A place where Qi, the life force, circulates between the self and the world. That's why in many Eastern traditions, protection cords are tied at the wrist. It's why monks chant while wrapping mala beads around their arms. What touches the wrist becomes part of your vibrational imprint. In the language of Feng Shui, everything you wear carries a message. But when worn at the wrist, so close to your pulse, your rhythm, your offering hand, it becomes a declaration. Are you aligned with the energy of growth, or unknowingly carrying a material that blocks your fortune? Wealth, in this view, is not a matter of chance or effort alone. It's a result of harmony. When your inner nature and outer symbols are aligned, when your space, actions, and adornments support your elemental energy, abundance flows more freely. But when those elements clash, even with effort, luck seems to stall. This video isn't about fashion, and it isn't about superstition. It's about energy mechanics, grounded in centuries of Feng Shui wisdom. Together, we'll explore how the right bracelet, worn with purpose and clarity, can amplify your financial energy, shield your decisions from confusion, and serve as a daily compass toward your own abundance. We'll discuss the importance of materials, why jade calms and nurtures, why black quartz protects clarity, why tiger's eye ignites ambition. You'll learn why placement matters, why the left wrist receives and the right wrist releases. And you'll discover the hidden power in choosing the right number of beads, cleansing rituals, and elemental matching based on your energy profile. And perhaps most importantly, I'll share a simple but powerful story about a woman who wore an expensive bracelet for years, yet never felt its promise. Not until she discovered that it clashed with her Feng Shui birth element. When she changed to one aligned with her natural energy, the shifts in her career and confidence were unmistakable. So before we dive deeper into this teaching, I warmly invite you to support this space of wisdom and clarity. Please like this video, share it with someone navigating their financial path, and subscribe to New Day Mindfulness. Your engagement helps us reach more seekers and keeps these teachings alive. Because here we don't chase wealth, we align with it. And sometimes all it takes is what's already resting on your wrist. Shall we begin? Why the wrist holds power in Feng Shui. In traditional Feng Shui, the wrist is more than just a joint that connects hand to arm. It is considered one of the body's most significant energetic crossing points. This belief stems from both ancient Chinese meridian theory and the broader geomantic understanding that certain parts of the human body function like miniature landscapes, echoing the larger flows of energy seen in landforms and buildings. The wrist, in this case, is like a personal energy gate. What enters here affects your internal state, and what exits here reveals your external expression. According to meridian theory, the wrist intersects several primary energy pathways that regulate not only physical functions, but also emotional, spiritual, and financial flow. In Feng Shui, the principle of yin and yang is key to understanding the wrist's dual function. The left wrist is associated with yin energy, which governs receptivity, intuition, and internal nourishment. The right wrist is aligned with yang energy, which governs outward action, protection, and the expulsion of negative or stagnant forces. When applied to daily life, this means the left wrist is the ideal place to wear items meant to attract, accumulate, or receive energy, whether it be wealth, calm, wisdom, or divine support. Conversely, the right wrist is suited for wearing items intended to block, repel, or release, such as protective talismans or objects that help discharge stress and negativity. These placements are not merely symbolic. They are rooted in a functional philosophy that the body is constantly responding to subtle influences, and even the smallest shift in placement can alter the quality of energy you hold or deflect. Consider this. If you're going through a time of financial difficulty or emotional fatigue, placing a wealth-enhancing stone on your left wrist, like green jade, tiger's eye, or a Pixiu charm, can support your capacity to receive new energy. But if you're burdened by overthinking, toxic environments, or unwanted attention, it may be more useful to wear obsidian, black tourmaline, or a protective wooden bead on your right wrist to filter out what does not serve. This isn't a superstition, it's energetic design. It reflects the same principle that tells us to place our bed against a solid wall, our desk facing the door, and our stove in a commanding position. It is about positioning the body to support the natural flow of life. Feng Shui always reminds us that where you place things matters, not just in your room, but on your body. The wrist is a high traffic zone for energy exchange. When we shake hands, carry weight, or gesture while speaking, the wrist is the first to move. It extends intention. It amplifies expression. It anchors focus. That's why monks wrap red string on the wrist during rituals. That's why healers touch the wrist to feel more than just a pulse. They are feeling movement, listening to where chi is going or where it's stuck. There is wisdom in pausing before putting something on your wrist and asking, what is this item here to help me do? What am I inviting? What am I releasing? Let's take a closer look at this from a practical example. Imagine someone who's struggling with both stress and an inability to save money. If they wear a bracelet designed to enhance financial luck on the right wrist, the yang side, they may unconsciously push that energy away. They're using the output side of their body to call in something they want to receive. It's like planting seeds in a stream instead of soil. They get washed away. But when they move the bracelet to the left wrist, the yin side, they create a container for that energy to settle and integrate. It's not magic, it's congruence. Likewise, if someone is dealing with lingering jealousy from others or emotional toxicity at work, and they wear a protective bracelet on the left side, they may find themselves absorbing too much of what they're trying to block. The yin side pulls in. It's not the right gate for defense. Shift that protection to the right, and suddenly the body begins to filter, to deflect, to guard. In this way, the wrist becomes a powerful point of agency, and the bracelet, when correctly placed, becomes a silent partner in recalibrating how you relate to your environment. From a Buddhist perspective, this idea aligns with the principle of right view. We are not told to discard the material world, but to see it clearly. Wearing a bracelet is not about attaching to the object. It is about using form to support function, using intention to animate matter. This is why monks may wear a simple mala bead around the wrist during retreat, not as decoration, but as a subtle reminder of inner alignment. It doesn't make them holy, it makes them mindful of their channel. In essence, what you wear on your wrist becomes part of your energetic dialogue with the universe. It is no longer passive. It speaks for you when you forget what you're saying. It reflects what you may not even know you're broadcasting. And just like the orientation of your bed or the colors on your wall, it matters. Because energy listens, because placement speaks. So before you slide a bracelet over your hand tomorrow, don't just ask, does this look good? Ask, does this support the energy I want to carry today? And remember, sometimes the smallest shift in direction unlocks the biggest change in flow. In the world of Feng Shui, subtlety is not weakness, it is mastery. Matching your wealth bracelet to your personal energy field. In classical Feng Shui, the power of alignment is not just found in your home's direction or the position of your bed. It is carried in your body and expressed through the materials that touch your skin. Among the most powerful of these daily expressions is the bracelet, especially when worn in harmony with your personal energy element. Every individual, according to the 5-element system, has a dominant energetic signature shaped by their date of birth, inner temperament, and even the kind of challenges they face. This element acts as a guiding frequency, influencing how you respond to the world, how energy flows through your life, and, most importantly, what kind of energetic nourishment you truly need. When your chosen bracelet material complements this frequency, it becomes more than just an object. It becomes a channel for growth, clarity, protection, or momentum. But if the material clashes with your element, the result can be subtle but consistent misalignment, fatigue, missteps, poor decisions, or wealth opportunities that slip away just as they arrive. Let's begin with the wood element. People who carry a strong wood essence are the natural builders, visionaries, and strategists. They are forward-thinking, driven by growth, and often have a desire to create systems, lead teams, or improve the status quo. Their energy thrives when it is given a direction and room to expand. The ideal bracelet materials for these individuals are green jade and agar wood. Green jade, in particular, holds a deeply harmonizing frequency that mirrors the wood element's innate quest for upward movement and stability. It promotes compassion, mental clarity, and wise leadership, qualities that wood-dominant individuals must embody to succeed without becoming rigid or overbearing. Agar wood, on the other hand, supports spiritual anchoring and patience. Its deep aromatic presence helps calm the sometimes impatient drive of wood types, allowing them to root their ideas before rushing forward. A wood person wearing green jade or agar wood on their left wrist is essentially feeding their soul with the right kind of light, one that grows slowly but deeply, creating success that lasts. Next is the fire element. Fire types are dynamic, expressive, and charismatic. They light up rooms, launch projects with enthusiasm, and often find themselves at the center of attention. Whether they seek it or not, their greatest gifts include vision, influence, and the ability to inspire. But unbalanced fire energy can burn too hot, leading to burnout, recklessness, or emotional volatility. For this reason, bracelets made of red agate or tiger's eye are ideal. Red agate amplifies vitality while also grounding emotion, giving fire types a steady flame rather than a wildfire. It brings courage, but also caution. Tiger's eye is another powerful ally, offering the strategic clarity that keeps ambition focused. It sharpens vision, aids in decision-making, and prevents distraction, a common challenge for fire personalities. A fire-aligned individual who wears tiger's eye on the left wrist in times of expansion or the right wrist during moments of crisis is essentially regulating their inner flame, stoking it when needed, containing it when it threatens to overwhelm. Then we have the earth element, the stabilizers, nurturers, and planners. Earth types are known for their deep sense of responsibility, their desire to care for others, and their tendency to move cautiously and deliberately. They excel in roles that require patience, trust building, and support. However, earth energy can become overly heavy, making people feel stuck, overly cautious, or burdened by worry. That's why earth types benefit from wearing bracelets made from yellow citrine, fossil beads, or sand-colored stones. Citrine especially holds the resonance of sunlight, bringing warmth, optimism, and an inviting energy that offsets the heaviness of excessive earth chi. It helps them open up to new possibilities while still feeling secure. Fossil beads, composed of ancient organic material, carry the wisdom of time and process, something earth types often forget in their desire to have it all figured out. Wearing these materials can help them feel supported, uplifted, and more willing to take healthy risks. When an earth person wears citrine on the left wrist, They are reminding themselves that it's okay to receive. When they wear it on the right, they are gently releasing the fear of instability that so often holds them back from investing in themselves. The metal element brings us to the thinkers, organizers, and people of discipline. Metal-dominant individuals value order, clarity, and logic. They tend to be minimalistic, detail-oriented, and extremely capable of refining systems. They succeed through precision and internal strength. But left unbalanced, metal energy can become cold, inflexible, or overly perfectionistic. That's where white jade and silver quartz come in. White jade brings a softness to metal's sharp edge. It harmonizes the need for control with the reality of life's unpredictability. It soothes the nervous system, encourages receptivity, and helps metal types remember that beauty often lies in imperfection. Silver quartz, on the other hand, boosts intellectual clarity and channelizes thought into action. It acts like a mirror, helping them see their patterns more clearly and transform analysis into results. One client, a metal-aligned entrepreneur, constantly struggled with launching new ideas. She had vision, but no follow-through. Upon advice, she switched from her usual wood and agate bracelets to a simple white jade string on her left wrist. Within 2 months, she reported a remarkable shift in mental focus, followed by 2 successful product launches. The shift wasn't due to the jade alone, but to the elemental harmony it brought to her field. Finally, we arrive at the water element, the mystics, dreamers, and adapters. Water types are intuitive, fluid, and deeply connected to the unseen. They possess inner depth and often excel in healing, research, or artistic work. Their challenge is not creativity, it is consistency. When their energy is unbalanced, they may become indecisive, withdrawn, or emotionally overwhelmed. The best bracelet materials for water types are obsidian and black quartz. Obsidian is a powerful grounding stone. It anchors water's endless motion and gives it a shoreline. It protects the wearer's subtle field from emotional debris and helps maintain strong personal boundaries. Black quartz magnifies inner vision while creating structure, giving water types the focus they often lack. Wearing obsidian on the right wrist during times of emotional vulnerability or on the left wrist when seeking inner wisdom can help water people access their full potential without becoming overwhelmed by it. It's important to remember that your dominant element is not a fixed destiny, it's a starting point. And in Feng Shui, energy is dynamic. The bracelet you wear today may serve a different purpose than the one you need next season. What matters most is intention, awareness, and the willingness to harmonize your inner terrain with the symbolic tools you carry. When chosen correctly, a bracelet is not just jewelry, it's alignment made visible. It becomes a silent ritual you carry with you, a vote for coherence in every decision you make. And while the world may not see it, your energy field will feel it. Opportunities may feel closer, discernment may sharpen, and your path, once blurred, may begin to clear. So before you reach for your next bracelet, ask not only what it looks like, but what it's made for. What story does the material carry? What part of your energy does it nourish or suppress? And most importantly, how does it make you feel when you're quiet, when you're still, when you listen beyond appearances? In Feng Shui, we don't chase good luck. We prepare space for it. And sometimes that preparation starts with the subtle weight of a stone that finally feels like it belongs on your wrist. Bracelet as wealth gatekeeper. In Feng Shui and classical metaphysics, a bracelet is far more than a decorative object. It is a symbolic interface, a subtle yet potent gatekeeper between your internal energy field and the ever-changing, often chaotic energy of the world around you. This understanding is rooted in both Chinese 5-element theory and the deeper geomantic principles of living materials, which recognize the spiritual memory embedded within natural substances like crystal, wood, stone, or bone. To those unfamiliar with this tradition, wearing a bracelet might seem like a harmless aesthetic choice, a matter of color, style, or sentimental value. But to the trained eye of a Feng Shui practitioner, a bracelet is a wearable talisman that, whether the wearer realizes it or not, is doing energetic work all day long. The question is not whether it's affecting you, but whether it's doing so consciously or unconsciously. A bracelet, once placed on the wrist, begins to interact with the body's meridian system. It acts as a buffer, absorbing, deflecting, or transmuting energetic information from your environment. In practical terms, this means that during moments of emotional turbulence, such as being in a tense room, confronting a difficult conversation, or navigating a stressful decision, your bracelet can serve as a shield. If it's made of material attuned to your field, it deflects what is not yours and preserves your clarity. If it is misaligned or synthetic, it may amplify noise and interfere with your emotional balance, or worse, drain your attention silently over time. But this energetic shielding is only one function. The deeper magic of a bracelet lies in what's known as frequency memory. Natural materials, particularly stones and crystals, have the capacity to hold vibration. In other words, they remember the dominant intention with which they were worn. Over days and weeks, that memory forms a kind of echo chamber around your aura. Think of it like a song on repeat, and not loud enough for others to hear, but constantly humming just beneath your awareness. If you wear a bracelet daily while reinforcing a specific mantra, visualization, or spiritual archetype, the bracelet will begin to anchor that frequency. It becomes not just an object of protection, but of alignment. It helps you hold the thread of who you are becoming, especially on days when you are tempted to forget. This is why, in traditional Buddhist temples and Taoist monasteries, spiritual initiates would often craft their own beads from sacred wood or semi-precious stones. The act of threading each bead was not just a task. It was a meditation, a commitment, and once worn, the bracelet was not changed out like a fashion item. It was worn until its purpose had been fulfilled or its energy depleted. In Feng Shui, this practice is mirrored through the belief that living or once living materials, like agar wood, sandalwood, jade, or quartz, continue to carry what we might call Earth's breath. They are not inert. They are in dialogue with us. They pull from the ground the memory of growth, decay, pressure, transformation. And when they touch your skin, they begin to shape your field with that same elemental intelligence. This shaping process is subtle, but over time it becomes deeply impactful. A person wearing a bracelet of obsidian during a time of emotional upheaval may not notice an immediate shift in mood or behavior, but after weeks of use, they may find they are no longer as reactive to criticism, no longer as anxious in crowds, no longer carrying energy that doesn't belong to them. This isn't placebo, it's resonance. The bracelet has buffered their field long enough to allow their inner self to repair and regain clarity. Conversely, if someone wears a bracelet unconsciously, perhaps a gift from a friend made of unknown material with no particular purpose or alignment, they may begin to experience unexplained fatigue, emotional volatility, or even financial blocks. Why? Because energy that is not conscious is still working, but it is working without direction. And in Feng Shui, energy without direction is one of the most dangerous forces in any environment, internal or external. Beyond intention and material, another overlooked dimension of bracelet magic is archetypal alignment. In spiritual psychology, each of us operates through dominant archetypes. I am protector, builder, healer, connector, strategist. These archetypes are not static roles, they are energetic lenses through which we view and engage with the world. When you select a bracelet consciously, you are also anchoring yourself to one of these roles. A thick bracelet of hematite or black tourmaline, for instance, may support the protector archetype, someone who shields others, who stands guard over their home or community. A bracelet made of citrine and amber may nourish the builder, one who creates, nurtures, and grows. Tiger's eye speaks to the strategist, while moonstone or rose quartz belongs to the healer or connector. When you wear a bracelet aligned with your active archetype, it not only enhances your effectiveness, it reduces inner conflict. It helps your nervous system settle into its role for the season you're in. It prevents the fragmentation that happens when we try to be everything at once. This principle of alignment goes even deeper when we consider spiritual timing. There are seasons in your life when you are meant to initiate, and seasons when you are meant to retreat. Wearing a bracelet aligned with action during a time of emotional release may block needed healing. Wearing one aligned with protection during a season of growth may unintentionally harden you against new opportunity. That's why in Buddhist teaching, we are always invited to listen, not just to teachings, but to timing. Right object, wrong time is still a form of imbalance. That's why awareness must always accompany adornment. To wear a bracelet without purpose is to let your energy be guided by chance. To wear it with purpose is to reclaim the power of intention. Now let's ground all this with a practical story. There was once a woman who had struggled for years to gain clarity in her financial path. She had tried affirmations, vision boards, and even business coaching. Nothing truly stuck. Then, during a visit to a mountain retreat in Taiwan, she was gifted a sandalwood bracelet by a local monk. It was plain, unadorned, strung by hand. The monk told her simply, "Wear this when you are ready to remember your own rhythm." She did, and within months she noticed something curious, not that her income suddenly doubled, but that her decisions became clearer, her reactions more measured, and her vision more focused. She stopped chasing the wrong clients. She ended collaborations that drained her. She began to sleep better, eat slower, and speak with more certainty. Her bracelet hadn't changed her. It had helped her return to herself. That's what resonance does. That's what alignment supports. So consider this before you slip a bracelet over your wrist tomorrow morning. Ask not only what it's made of, but what it holds. Ask not only how it looks, but how it speaks. Energy is always transmitting. The question is, are you directing it or leaking it? In the art of Feng Shui, clarity is currency, and your bracelet may be one of the most direct investments you ever make in your energetic wealth. Not because it changes the world around you, but because it subtly, patiently, and silently strengthens the field through which all things arrive. Why 13 or 17 beads work, and 12 often doesn't? In the world of traditional metaphysical practice, especially within Feng Shui and related number-based cosmologies, the number of beads strung into a bracelet is far from an arbitrary choice. Much like architectural layout, room orientation, or even the placement of a mirror, the bead count operates as a structural, energetic code, an encoding of intent that subtly influences the rhythm of qi around and within the wearer. One of the most overlooked yet potent energetic decisions lies in how many beads make contact with your skin throughout the day, rotating through moments of action, rest, and decision-making. And while many gravitate toward familiar numbers like 8 or 12, associated with symmetry or cultural comfort, those who understand the deeper rhythm of numerology and Feng Shui know that not all bead counts carry equal vibrational weight. Certain numbers open, others close, and a select few, like 13, 17, or 21, hold the rare quality of rebirth. This idea begins with what classical numerologists call the remainder principle. When you divide these numbers, 13, 17, 21, by 4, what remains is 1. This might seem like a trivial mathematical detail until you realize what the number 4 represents in Chinese metaphysics, the full cycle of transformation. The number 4 reflects the totality of elemental movement, growth, peak, decline, and dormancy, analogous to the seasons, the stages of life, and the natural progression of any endeavor. It is the container of completeness. But when a number exceeds 4 by 1, it doesn't settle, it transcends. It pushes forward into renewal, representing not just closure, but conscious continuation. That remainder, small as it seems, carries profound symbolic power. It says, the cycle does not end here. Something lives on, something new begins. It is, in essence, the number of regeneration. When applied to bead counts on a bracelet, this means that stringing 13, 17, or 21 beads isn't simply a stylistic choice. It is a numerical commitment to change. It sends a message to your field and to the universe that you are not bound to your past loops. You are prepared for a new outcome, for a shift in energy, for the emergence of a different result. These bead counts carry the subtle vibration of transformation, particularly useful for those who are seeking a fresh start, whether in finances, relationships, career, or internal growth. When worn on the wrist, these bead counts interface with the meridian system in such a way that they become rhythm setters. Just as a metronome sets tempo for music, the number of beads sets a vibrational frequency for your subtle body. With each movement of your hand, each flick of the wrist, you reinforce the rhythm of what you are becoming. By contrast, even numbered bead counts, especially those divisible by 4 with no remainder, like 8, 12, or 16, create a closed loop. Energetically, they support stability, repetition, and preservation of the current pattern. That's not inherently bad. In fact, in yin-based healing, these numbers are incredibly powerful. If someone is dealing with trauma, illness, or exhaustion and needs containment, security, and restoration, a bracelet of 12 or 16 beads might feel like a soft shelter, a repeating lullaby of safety. But for those who are trying to break a cycle, like shifting out of chronic financial scarcity, changing long-held behavioral patterns, or stepping into leadership, these numbers can reinforce the very field you're trying to outgrow. This is why in many traditional Buddhist malas, the bead count is 108, not just because it's a sacred number, but because it carries layers of mathematical and spiritual complexity that support long-form spiritual evolution. But in wrist malas and wealth bracelets, the practitioner's aim is often more targeted. You're not reciting thousands of mantras. You're navigating your day, meeting clients, handling transactions, making decisions. In this space, a tighter intention-specific bead count becomes crucial. A string of 13 beads quietly reminds your field, I'm entering the next cycle. 17 beads carry a slightly more assertive tone. I've seen what didn't work. Now I choose otherwise. 21 beads, the highest commonly used rebirth count, echo the rhythm of planetary rotation, of full cycles across time, and are ideal for those engaged in long-term projects or seeking generational transformation in wealth patterns. Now consider this practical application. A man struggling with recurring job instability had been wearing a fashionable bracelet with 12 beads, chosen not for energy, but for looks. Despite working long hours and applying himself, he found that every professional gain seemed to reset after a few months, like clockwork. After consulting with a Feng Shui practitioner, he learned about the influence of bead count and shifted to a custom-made tiger's eye bracelet with 13 beads. Within weeks, he reported a shift, not in sudden wealth, but in his own mental rhythm. He became less reactive, more decisive, and perhaps most critically, he stopped self-sabotaging when success started to build. This wasn't the bracelet creating wealth, it was the rhythm of the bracelet rewiring his field to receive it. There's another layer to consider. In Feng Shui, everything in the home and on the body should echo natural patterns of breath, of tide, of heartbeat. The wrist, then, is not simply a neutral zone, it is a rhythm amplifier. Just as breath moves in cycles, in, pause, out, pause. The movement of your wrist beads forms a loop of energy memory. And because your wrist is constantly in motion, typing, gesturing, holding, reaching, it becomes the perfect site to carry a subtle metronome of your chosen rhythm. This is especially true when you pair the correct bead count with the correct material for your personal element. For example, a water-type individual may wear 17 black obsidian beads to strengthen both intuitive clarity and break through fear-based stagnation. A fire-type leader might choose 13 tiger's eye beads to move beyond burnout and reclaim strategic authority. An earth-type planner might wear 21 fossil beads to support a stable but expansive shift into long-term wealth building. Ultimately, wearing a bracelet with the correct bead count is like choosing a background song that plays in your subconscious all day. If it's the wrong melody, too slow, too repetitive, or misaligned, it drags your energy down. If it's tuned right, it quietly strengthens your posture, your choices, and your timing. It becomes an anchor without needing your constant attention. And over time, this alignment begins to show up in how you spend, save, speak, and invest. Not just money, but energy. So the next time you pick up a bracelet, don't just ask what it's made of. Count the beads, feel the number in your palm. Ask yourself what rhythm you're trying to break or what new cycle you're ready to begin. Are you looping where you should be launching? Are you stabilizing when you should be growing? These aren't just numerological riddles. They are energetic instructions, quietly waiting for you to listen. In Feng Shui, alignment is not dramatic, it is deliberate. And sometimes your fortune shifts not when you find a bigger opportunity, but when you change the rhythm of your own wrist. In this way, the beads you wear are more than objects. They are quiet companions of your becoming, carriers of cadence, builders of flow, whispers of rhythm that, over time, become the soundtrack of a new life. Ritual wearing. When, where, and why it matters. Yin versus yang. Wrist. Wearing a bracelet in Feng Shui is not about aesthetics or mere tradition. It is a dialogue between the body and the universe, one that requires timing, positioning, and intention to carry its full, energetic potential. To the untrained eye, putting on a bracelet might appear as a mindless act, part of a morning routine or a fashion statement. But to a practitioner who understands the mechanics of chi flow and meridian theory, the act of placing a bracelet on the wrist becomes a ritual in energy coding. The wrist, with its high concentration of meridian endpoints, operates as a gateway between the internal chi of your organs and the external ki of your environment. The left and right wrists are not interchangeable. They serve completely different functions in the body's energetic architecture. In classical Feng Shui, rooted in Taoist cosmology and five-element theory, the left wrist is associated with yin energy. Yang is receptive, internal, and magnetic. The left side of the body is the hand of receiving, where blessings, fortune, healing, and insight enter. Therefore, when one seeks to attract something, be it wealth, opportunity, harmony, or clarity, the bracelet should be worn on the left wrist. This placement opens the body to energetic intake. It allows the embedded frequency of the bracelet's material to enter your field and be absorbed into your system with minimal resistance. The right wrist, by contrast, is yang. Yang is active, external, and protective. It governs output, assertiveness, and defense. When energy needs to be blocked, detoxed, or redirected, the right wrist is the appropriate zone. Wearing a bracelet here signals to the body, this is what I am ready to release. For those navigating emotionally toxic environments, public performance, or draining relationships, a protective stone, such as obsidian, hematite, or black onyx, worn on the right wrist, becomes not just a shield, but a frequency filter. It helps repel what doesn't belong, preventing external negativity from settling into your nervous system or decision-making pathways. Thus, choosing the wrist is not a matter of preference, but of function. Wearing a wealth-enhancing stone like citrine or jade on the right wrist, while symbolically hopeful, can confuse your energy field because it's sending out what you're supposed to receive. This mismatch may result in lost opportunities, mistimed deals, or even subtle anxiety about abundance that isn't yours to carry. But when that same bracelet is worn on the left wrist, especially during morning routines, its vibration finds fertile ground. The act of placing it there becomes a conscious alignment. I am open to fortune. I am ready to hold prosperity without fear. Timing, too, is critical. The rhythms of the day echo the flow of qi through your meridians. In Chinese medicine, each 2-hour period is ruled by a different organ system and energetic quality. Morning, especially between the hours of 7 a.m. and 11 a.m., when the stomach and spleen meridians are most active, is considered the ideal window for wealth-focused rituals. This is when the body is digesting, both literally and energetically. The energy you take in during this time shapes the tone of your day. Wearing a bracelet during this period, especially on the left wrist, amplifies your intention to attract focused, stable, and nourishing energy. It is an anchoring gesture, one that connects the abstract idea of abundance to the physical reality of your actions, decisions, and emotional field. Evening, in contrast, is a time for detoxification. After 7 p.m., as the kidney and pericardium meridians come online, the body turns inward. This is when you process emotional input, discharge stress, and prepare for rest. Wearing a bracelet on the right wrist in the evening can support energetic shedding, helping your system release what it unconsciously absorbed throughout the day. It's a way of closing loops, of creating a buffer between your inner space and the clutter of the external world. For those prone to overthinking or emotional entanglement, this practice can bring significant relief. Imagine, for instance, returning home from a draining workday, lighting incense or sage, slipping a protective stone into your right wrist, and silently affirming, "What is not mine, I release Wahas." This is not magic, it is resonance, using intention to recalibrate the signal your body sends and receives. There is also what we call the sacred gesture. It is a simple act, often overlooked, but rich with meaning. When placing your bracelet on either wrist, pause. Close your eyes for one breath. Whisper, internally or aloud, "May this day align my effort with unseen support." This is not a superstition. This is a programming. Your words infuse the bracelet with purpose. They animate the object with qi, like lighting incense or bowing before entering a sacred room. In doing so, you are reminding yourself that you are not alone in your effort, that what you wear is an echo of what you believe. This gesture transforms the ordinary into the sacred, and over time, it builds a personal ritual that grounds you in a frequency of alignment. Here's a brief but powerful example. A woman in Singapore navigating a series of failed investments began wearing a Pixiu charm bracelet on her left wrist every morning at sunrise. She paired it with a whispered mantra and a brief visualization of the kind of clients and collaborations she wished to call in. Within a month, she reported 2 unexpected partnership opportunities, both aligned with her deeper values, both anchored in mutual trust. Was it the bracelet? Perhaps not directly, but the act of wearing it at the right time, on the right wrist, with clear intent, allowed her internal frequency to match the opportunities that were already seeking her. She didn't summon wealth from the void. She cleared the static so she could receive what was already circling her field. In Feng Shui, we often say that luck favors the aligned, not the frantic. A bracelet, when worn ritually, becomes a compass, a regulator of your daily signal. It is not the source of power, but a transmitter. a conductor of belief, direction, and presence. And like all tools, its potency is equal to your clarity in using it. So the next time you reach for a bracelet, ask not just, does this match my outfit? But rather, does this match my moment? Am I wearing this to call in or to let go? Is it morning? Do I need vision? Is it night? Do I need release? Your wrist, after all, is not just a joint, it is a gate. And when you learn to open and close it with intention, you begin to live not by chance, but by choice. Not chasing wealth, but tuning your energy field so that wealth feels invited, finally, into a space that knows how to hold it. Cleansing the bracelet, the forgotten ritual that keeps wealth energy pure. The tools we use, whether placed in a home or worn on the body, carry more than just symbolic weight. They carry energetic memory. A bracelet designed to attract wealth is not immune to this law. In fact, because it rests so close to the skin, traveling with us through daily tensions, financial stressors, silent doubts, public energies, and private worries, it becomes one of the most vulnerable instruments for energetic contamination. Without cleansing, that bracelet, no matter how pure its stone or sacred its design, slowly becomes a container of distortion, a vessel that once held purpose, but now holds residue. The irony, of course, is that while people routinely cleanse their bodies, their homes, and their bank accounts, they often forget to cleanse the very object that has been silently mediating between their intention and their manifestation. To understand why cleansing is essential, we must first understand what a wealth bracelet actually absorbs. It is not just physical dirt or exposure to the elements. It collects fragments, emotional residue from your own stress, projections from those around you, environmental static, and most invisibly unresolved intention. That last category is especially tricky. Every time you slip on your bracelet while harboring conflicting thoughts, wanting abundance but fearing loss, aiming for growth but avoiding risk, you are programming your field with cross signals. The bracelet stores that. Like a sponge, it doesn't question. It simply holds. Over time, these layered vibrations can begin to interfere with the very alignment you seek. You may notice your results becoming unpredictable, your emotions fluctuating more rapidly, or your formerly empowering bracelet feeling heavy, even agitating. These are not mystical symptoms. They are energetic overload. And like any system carrying too much unprocessed data, your field begins to lag, misfire, or shut down altogether. This is why in Feng Shui-informed spiritual practice, we honor a cleansing ritual, not as a superstition, but as a maintenance of frequency integrity. One of the most effective and time-tested methods is the salt bowl reset. Salt, especially unrefined sea salt or Himalayan pink salt, is known in both ancient Chinese geomancy and Vedic ritual as a mineral of absorption and purification. Its crystalline structure draws out stagnant or chaotic qi and disperses it safely. To perform a salt bowl reset, place your bracelet in a clean, dry ceramic or glass bowl filled with salt. Leave it there overnight during a full moon. Why the full moon? Because it represents energetic culmination and release, the most natural time to empty what it is full, to discard what is complete. Under moonlight, the salt is not just physical, it becomes symbolic, acting as a bridge between heaven's reflective gaze and Earth's absorbing matrix. In the morning, discard the salt completely, rinse the bracelet with cool water, and offer a moment of gratitude. Not to the bracelet, but to yourself for restoring clarity. For those who prefer sound or scent over minerals, sandalwood smoke and bell chimes provide two equally potent alternatives. Passing your bracelet through the gentle curls of sandalwood incense, or sacred woods like Palo Santo or agar wood, invites both a calming and a clarifying vibration. The smoke wraps around the bracelet, acting as an energetic solvent, breaking up density and awakening the memory of the stone's original purpose. But this isn't about rushing through the ritual. The key is presence. Hold the bracelet slowly in the smoke, turn it gently, whisper your intention again. Not what you want from the world, but what you want to offer it. Clarity, stability, resonance. Similarly, bell or gong cleansing, particularly using tones in the 432 Hz or 528 Hz range, works by resetting the crystalline memory of the bracelet's material. Crystals, as known in both metaphysics and modern physics, respond to vibration. A bell rung close to the bracelet, allowing the tone to pass through and over it, not only clears stored frequencies, but repatterns the bracelet's subtle field to harmonize with your desired state. This method is particularly powerful after conflict, emotional overwhelm, or when the bracelet has been handled by others. And while these cleansing techniques are effective, timing remains just as important as method. Energetic buildup doesn't follow a calendar. It follows your life's cadence. However, as a general rule, cleansing should be performed at least once every full moon cycle, which aligns with the lunar flow of emotional release and energetic reflection. This ensures that any buildup is addressed before it begins to affect your manifestation field. Additionally, you should cleanse your bracelet after any significant financial disappointment, betrayal, or prolonged period of stress. Don't wait for the object to feel off. Be proactive. Just as you wouldn't cook your next meal in a pan coated with last week's residue, you shouldn't ask your bracelet to conduct fresh energy when it's still echoing your last misalignment. Here's a concrete example that illustrates the cost of ignoring this wisdom. A business consultant in Hong Kong who had long worn a tiger's eye bracelet reported a gradual decline in clarity in project flow. Initially, the bracelet had boosted his confidence and decision-making, but after months of high-stress negotiation, travel, and fatigue, he began experiencing erratic sleep, interpersonal friction, and confusion around deals. A local Feng Shui master examined the bracelet, not the man's home, not his charts, and simply asked, "When did you last clear this?" The answer, never. After performing a smoke cleansing followed by a salt reset and resting the bracelet for 3 days without wearing it, the man reported a sharp return of clarity, emotional calm, and, within 2 weeks, closed 2 contracts that had stalled for months. The bracelet hadn't changed. The man hadn't changed. The field had been cleared. That's the power of maintenance. In Buddhist tradition, the cleaning of altar objects is not optional. It is seen as an act of devotion, not to the item, but to the purity of mind. Likewise, cleansing your bracelet is not an indulgence. It is a gesture of respect for the energy it carries, for the future you are inviting, and for the version of yourself who is walking with that energy into every room, every decision, every threshold. You wouldn't serve tea in a cup that still held yesterday's sorrow. So don't try to attract abundance with a field still soaked in your last defeat. Cleansing is not about fear or obsession. It's about rhythm, a way of staying attuned to your own energetic hygiene. Because just as chi flows through your home via doors and hallways, it flows through your body via symbols and tools. The bracelet you wear is not immune. It's listening, always. And if you learn to pause, once a month, once a heartbreak, once a breakthrough, you give yourself a chance to start again with clarity, with purpose, and with a field clear enough to receive the wealth already circling you, waiting for an opening. That opening begins with you, and often with something as quiet and reverent as washing your own frequency clean. The dangers of borrowing and overlaying. In the subtle science of Feng Shui, where energy is understood to move through space, objects, and intention with measurable influence, the concept of personal frequency alignment is central. One of the most common and underestimated violations of that alignment is the casual act of borrowing, or worse, lending a bracelet designed for wealth activation or spiritual alignment. While in Western culture the gesture may seem harmless or even affectionate, energetically, it is a major breach. A bracelet is not just an accessory, it is an energetic proxy holding not only your conscious intent, but also the residual patterns of your subconscious field. When someone else wears that bracelet, even briefly, they imprint their own vibrational signature onto it. This isn't a philosophical metaphor, it's a direct energetic transaction. The bracelet, like a sponge, absorbs emotional residue, thought patterns, and karmic imprints. Once introduced, these signals interfere with your original intention, confusing the bracelet's energetic purpose and diluting the strength of your manifestation current. Imagine fine-tuning a radio station for months, only to have someone else turn the dial slightly. What you hear may still resemble your music, but static distorts it, and the resonance begins to collapse. Energetic identity theft may sound dramatic, but that's essentially what happens when we allow our energy tools, especially wearable ones, to be handled, worn, or shared. In Buddhist and Taoist ceremonial traditions, personal tools are kept separate, wrapped in cloth, stored in sacred containers, and used only by the practitioner they belong to. Not out of elitism or superstition, but because of energetic hygiene. The same way you wouldn't hand your toothbrush to a friend or share undergarments with a stranger, you shouldn't share your wealth-aligned bracelet. Doing so tangles your frequency with theirs. And while you may deeply love or trust the person who borrows it, you have no control over the energetic imprint they're carrying in that moment, whether it's scarcity, fear, envy, or confusion. That imprint latches onto the stone, the cord, the clasp, and it stays. Beyond borrowing, another equally destabilizing practice is what we call overlayering. In modern spiritual consumerism, it's become fashionable to wear stacks of bracelets, agate next to obsidian, tiger's eye next to jade, rose quartz beside citrine. The visual appeal is undeniable. But in Feng Shui, this is less like playing a symphony and more like trying to sing 5 different songs at once. Every stone has a frequency field. Every material carries a story. When you stack them together without conscious coherence, you create signal interference. The result is a muddy vibration that sends mixed messages to your energetic field and the universe itself. You may want clarity, but you're also broadcasting protection, stimulation, softness, and ambition, all at the same time. It's not wrong, it's just chaotic. And in energy work, chaos doesn't create fortune. It creates confusion. Let's examine this more technically. Say you are wearing tiger's eye to amplify courage and decisive momentum, a yang stone, strong in fire element. Then beside it, you place black obsidian, a deeply yin stone that absorbs the negativity and slows energy to create stillness. You've now paired acceleration with grounding, movement with stagnation. They are not harmonizing. They are canceling each other out. Add in jade, earth element, known for growth and stability, and now you've got 3 directional commands in one stack. Push forward, pause, and stabilize. The bracelet doesn't know which signal to amplify. Your field begins to wobble. Your thoughts become inconsistent. Your financial behavior oscillates between impulse and hesitation. You've essentially jammed your own broadcast frequency. This is why the principle in authentic Feng Shui practice is not more is more. It's clarity creates momentum. A single stone family, worn with a clear intention and proper energetic maintenance, does far more than a wrist full of confused ambition. One bracelet, tuned to your elemental constitution and personal objective, acts like a laser. It doesn't just shine, it penetrates. It imprints the subtle field around your decisions, your words, your micro behaviors. And that field, in turn, begins to draw towards you opportunities, interactions, and timing that match its signal. When you dilute that signal with unnecessary layering, the field weakens. Instead of drawing abundance in, you start cycling energy, moving but going nowhere. Here's an illustration from a recent case. A young designer in San Francisco, obsessed with crystal jewelry, wore an eclectic stack of 7 bracelets every day. Lapis for intuition, citrine for abundance, moonstone for emotional balance, hematite for grounding, rose quartz for love, tiger's eye for confidence, and jade for long-term stability. She meditated daily and swore by her rituals, but she constantly reported feeling overwhelmed, indecisive, and unable to complete any project despite starting many. After a consultation, she was advised to remove all but one bracelet, tiger's eye, which aligned with her fire element birth chart. Within 3 weeks, she noticed increased mental clarity, faster task execution, and greater emotional steadiness. It wasn't the bracelet alone. It was the absence of interference. Her energy field had stopped spinning in circles and finally moved forward. Even if you're not sensitive to energy in a conventional sense, your body and subconscious still register these imprints. You may feel it as sudden fatigue, unexplained irritability, or a persistent sense of being off. These are not random states. They're signs of energetic misalignment. And often the fix is not to do more, but to wear less. Choose one purpose, choose one material. Wear it with clarity, let it embed, let it harmonize, let it build. This also requires a degree of discipline and humility. In a world that rewards accumulation, refinement is a radical act. Saying no to another bracelet or resisting the urge to stack for visual impact is not about deprivation. It's about energetic coherence. In the same way a single bowl of carefully prepared food nourishes better than a chaotic buffet, a single bracelet chosen with awareness nourishes your field more effectively than any collection made for the sake of variety. So here's the core guidance. Never lend your bracelet, never borrow one, and never stack stones with opposing frequencies. Let your bracelet be a sacred instrument of your unique energy signature, not a cluttered shelf of everyone else's hopes, fears, and styles. In Feng Shui, purity isn't about perfection, it's about direction. And your bracelet, when honored as a tool and not just an ornament, can carry your energy forward with precision, with clarity, and with the kind of focused resonance that makes luck feel less like an accident and more like a certainty waiting for you to arrive. A story that changed my view forever. Among all the lessons I've absorbed over the years through the study of Feng Shui, Buddhist energy theory, and countless case consultations, there was one story that quietly rewired how I view wearable energy tools. Not because it was the most dramatic, but because it unfolded in a way so simple, so grounded, and yet so undeniably powerful that it challenged many of the assumptions I previously held, even as a practitioner. It's the story of a man named Victor, a seasoned investor from Singapore, who had made a career of making calculated decisions under pressure. Victor was not someone who would entertain esoteric ideas lightly. He had built his firm on principles of analysis, trend forecasting, and deep market intuition. He wore suits that were tailored in London, kept his diet surgically clean, and wore a sleek, expensive silver watch, a status symbol and a self-reminder, as he often put it, of the precision he required to stay ahead in the game. That watch never left his wrist. It was his constant companion through boardroom negotiations, international flights, and late-night market reviews. Its polished face and cold weight became synonymous with how he approached life: disciplined, structured, forward-facing. But then something shifted. During a 2-week break he reluctantly agreed to take, at the insistence of his family, he found himself in Chiang Mai, northern Thailand, not at a resort, but on a cultural tour that included a visit to a Buddhist temple on a quiet hilltop just outside the city. There he met a monk, Not through any formal teaching, but in a moment of casual stillness. The monk didn't lecture. He merely offered Victor a piece of agar wood to smell, then handed him a simple hand-carved bracelet made from the same material. "This wood listens," the monk said. "Wear it not to prove, wear it to remember." Victor, out of politeness more than conviction, slipping the bracelet on and continued his day. That night, he didn't take it off. Something about its weight, so much lighter than his watch, felt oddly grounding. Unlike the timepiece that marked every passing second, this bracelet didn't seem to measure anything. It simply rested. Back home, something unexpected happened. Victor began reaching for the agar wood bracelet each morning instead of his watch. He told himself it was temporary, perhaps a jet lag-induced lapse. But the days passed and he noticed subtle changes, not in his portfolio, but in his own rhythm. Meetings felt less tense. He interrupted people less. His mind, which used to scan multiple scenarios simultaneously, began to move more linearly, with fewer internal conflicts. He wasn't any less sharp, but he was less reactive. He described the shift to me not in spiritual terms, but with a phrase that stayed with me. The bracelet didn't change the game. It changed how I heard the board. Within 6 months of this change, his team, previously known for high turnover, began to cohere. Colleagues said his presence felt more solid, less electric. They called him anchored. And while he still wore the same suits, gave the same presentations, and managed the same funds, he began ending meetings with a kind of pause, a moment to take a breath, touch the wooden beads, and silently reset. When I later met him for a consultation, I asked what the bracelet meant to him now. He smiled and said, "It's not a charm, it's a compass, one that points me back to the decision I already know how to make, but only when I'm still enough to hear it." That moment reshaped something in me. I had long believed in the power of materials, in the elemental nature of stones and woods, in the meridian intersections along the wrist. But seeing the transformation in someone who had no need for mystical explanations, who measured everything through results, reminded me that the most profound tools are often the simplest. Not loud, not glowing, not advertised as magical, just aligned. The bracelet didn't make Victor rich. It made him receptive. It didn't unlock fortune. It stabilized the energy that chased it. And in that subtle distinction lies the core truth of Feng Shui. Real change doesn't shout. It whispers. It moves through presence, through choice, through the texture of a material against your skin that says, "You are not lost. You are just learning to feel again." Victor's story isn't unique because of his financial gains, though those did come. It's powerful because of how it illustrates the real work of energy alignment, not in mantras or miracles, but in the ability to return to a centered self, a self that is not confused by the noise, not seduced by urgency, not driven by lack. That bracelet, carved from living wood, had once absorbed the breath of the forest. Now it absorbed Victor's breath, and with each inhale, with each decision, it helped regulate the invisible pattern of his field, bringing his outer results into harmony with an inner posture of calm attentiveness. That, to me, is Feng Shui at its most effective. Not the placement of fountains, not the choice of lucky colors, but the restoration of rhythm between object and being. And if a simple bracelet could do that for a man who thought he needed a chronometer to stay in control, perhaps we all need to ask, what are we really wearing each day? And is it helping us hear the truth behind our own decisions, or only adding to the static? Since then, I've advised more clients than I can count to simplify their wrist choices. One intentional material, one aligned in frequency, no stacking, no borrowing, no hoping that quantity would make up for lack of clarity. And each time someone commits to that ritual, not as fashion, but as resonance, I see it again. Their breathing slows, their posture shifts, They speak with fewer maybes. Energy doesn't rush in, it settles. And with it, so does life. Victor taught me that the most valuable wealth is not the one you chase, but the one you quietly align with. Bracelet by bracelet, breath by breath. Final, in the refined lens of both Feng Shui and Buddhist tradition, nothing we interact with is neutral. Every object, every gesture, every material choice carries a ripple of intention, or lack thereof. The bracelet around your wrist is not merely decorative, nor is it just a piece of jewelry that completes an outfit. It is, in truth, an emissary of your energy. It carries a message, spoken not in words but in frequency, a declaration to the invisible forces that shape your path. And that message is not just, "I want to be wealthy," or "I hope to be protected." No, it speaks far deeper. It declares what kind of wealth you believe you are ready to hold, not only in the realm of money, but in the chambers of your heart, in the weight of your karma, and in the clarity of your soul's posture. That is why, in ancient traditions, sacred objects were never chosen quickly or worn casually. They were approached with reverence, selected with care, activated with prayer. Because the moment an object crosses the boundary between external and internal, between shop shelf and skin, it stops being an item and becomes a participant. The bracelet you wear becomes your ally, your echo, your reinforcement. It begins to influence how you feel, how you disseminate, how you attract, and how you release. If it is worn in confusion, it broadcasts confusion. If it is worn in hope, it amplifies your longing. But if it is worn in alignment with the clarity of who you are becoming, then its field merges with yours, and together you co-create the energy to receive what you've always sensed was possible. And so, tomorrow morning, when your hand reaches for that bracelet, pause. Don't rush to fasten it with the same automation you use to swipe your phone or tie your shoes. Breathe with it, ask it silently, what energy shall we carry today? And then ask yourself not what you want to attract, but what you're finally ready to become. A person who moves with calm intention, a person who no longer apologizes for desiring abundance, a person whose presence, even in silence, communicates wholeness. Let the bracelet speak that truth before you utter a word. In Feng Shui, we say that qi doesn't lie. It flows where attention flows. So let your attention be precise. Let your tools be aligned. And let your body be not just a host for things, but a vessel for meaning. Because wealth is not just a number in your account. It is the coherence of your field, the steadiness of your breath, the permission you give yourself to live without energetic distortion. That journey, more than any financial milestone, is the true abundance. And if something in today's teaching stirred a quiet knowing inside you, if you found yourself nodding, reflecting, or remembering something you once felt but had forgotten, I invite you gently to help grow this shared space of wisdom. Like this video, leave a comment about your own experiences with wealth bracelets or energetic tools. Subscribe to New Day Mindfulness. Your presence helps this circle expand. Your gesture becomes an offering, not just to me, but to the many silent seekers who will find their way here tomorrow, looking for a path less cluttered, more intentional, and deeply, powerfully aligned. Thank you for walking that path with me.